You know what they don't warn you about when you start your own auto shop? It's not the overhead, not the permits, not even the fact that your knees will sound like popcorn by 45. It's that betrayal doesn't always show up with lipstick on the collar or late-night texts. Sometimes, it comes in the form of a missing impact wrench. Brand new Milwaukee half-an-inch high-torque cordless beast. Sent me back nearly $600. I'd only had the thing a week. We kept it in the back of the shop, in the locked tool cage. Only me, Pete, and Ryan had keys. I ran the books, Pete ran the floor, and Ryan mostly ran late. But he's been with me since we were kids busting bumpers in my dad's garage. So when I came in Monday morning, coffee in one hand and invoice in the other, and saw the wrench missing from the wall like a pulled tooth, I knew something was off. First thought, Ryan misplaced it. Wouldn't be the first time. Hey, Ree, I called out. Where's the new Milwaukee? He looked up from under the hood of a Camry and blinked. Huh? Should be in the cage. It ain't. He dropped the hood and walked over, checking for himself. Damn, you sure Pete didn't take it home? Pete shook his head from across the bay. Nah, man, I don't borrow the new stuff. Not unless I ask first. I checked the log. Nothing. No checkout. No note. Just a blank space where $600 of torque should be. That's when my wife, Angie, walked in. She brought lunch sometimes. Real thoughtful. Sandwiches from the corner deli, a thermos of sweet tea, sometimes even a slice of her mama's peach pie. She'd sit on the stool in the break room and ask about business, pretending to care while scrolling her phone. Hey, Han, she said, leaning in for a kiss. You look grumpy. Missing a wrench. Oh, like one of those big, gun-looking things. I raised an eyebrow. Yeah. What? She chewed her lip. Oh, shoot. That might be my fault. I loaned it to a friend. You what? She laughed like it was nothing. You weren't using it, right? Janelle's boyfriend needed something for his brakes, and you've got, like, 10 of those things. My spine stiffened. That wasn't yours to give, Angie. Well, it's not like he's keeping it. He just needed it for the weekend. I stared at her. How'd he get it? She hesitated. You left the cage unlocked. I figured it was okay. I hadn't. I never do. But I didn't say that. Not yet. I just walked into the office, closed the door, and pulled up the camera feed from the weekend. Nothing. Footage was gone. Friday through Sunday. Gone. That's when the first flicker hit. You know that feeling when a fuse trips, but you don't know what caused it yet? Everything seems normal, but one light won't turn on, one outlet's dead, and your gut says, something's fried behind the wall. That was me. I came home quiet that night. Told her I'd follow up with Janelle's boyfriend and grab the wrench later. Angie smiled, kissed my cheek, and said, see? I told you it was no big deal. I nodded. Right. No big deal. And that's when I started watching her. Subtle things, at first. Like how she suddenly cared about her eyebrows. How she started working late, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, even though the office closed at 6. How she started doing yoga again, but never seemed to sweat. Angie was a decent liar. Just not good enough to fool a mechanic. Because here's the thing about running a shop. You learn to spot wear and tear. Tires don't lie. Brake pads don't lie. Neither do receipts. 3 weeks later, she had a team happy hour. Friday night. Some fancy wine bar uptown. I waited until she left. Then I called the bar. Hi there, I said, using my best charming husband voice. My wife's car broke down nearby, and I'm trying to find out if she actually made it in. Reservation under Angie or Janelle. The hostess checked. Sorry, sir. No reservation under those names. Oh, are y'all open tonight? We're actually closed for renovations until Monday. I thanked her, hung up, and just sat there. No anger. Not yet. Just that cold, creeping confirmation. She lied. I checked the bank account. No charge at any bar. But there was a charge for a motel off the bypass. Room 112. 1 queen bed. 2 guests. Friday, 6:45 p.m. Booked under A. Thompson. I stared at the screen. And smiled. Because now I wasn't guessing anymore. And unlike my wife, I knew how to use a wrench. The first rule of fixing an engine is simple. Don't start yanking things apart just because something sounds funny. You listen. You watch. You wait for the pattern to reveal itself. That's what I did with Angie. I didn't yell. Didn't confront. Didn't demand to know why our brand new impact wrench had to take a romantic weekend off with Janelle's mystery boyfriend. I just let her keep talking. And she did. Oh boy, did she. It's been so busy lately, she said over dinner one night. Janelle's got me buried in reports. Her new boyfriend's been picking her up after work so we can carpool. Saves on gas. I sipped my beer. Nice of him. She smiled. Yeah, he's super helpful. A real sweet guy. Sweet guy? Sure. That same week, I caught her in a slip-up. Said they were going to happy hour on Thursday. But later, when she mentioned her evening, she said, after yoga, I just needed some wine. Thought Thursday was drinks with the girls, I said, not even looking up from my chili. She blinked. Huh? Oh, no. That was last Thursday. I nodded. Must have misheard. I hadn't. I'd started keeping a notebook. Real low-key. Just a little pocket one I kept in the shop drawer marked inventory. Inside were notes. July 13th, said yoga, charged at Circle and Motel. July 15th, said happy hour, bar closed. July 19th, Janelle's car broke down, but came home in different clothes. Patterns. And the thing about Angie? She never covered her tracks quite right. Take her phone, for instance. She had one of those lock screens that lights up with previews, texts, Instagram, calendar events. I wasn't snooping. I swear to God. I'd just walk past it sitting on the nightstand while she was brushing her teeth and catch things like, can't wait to see you again tonight, kiss mark. Or, tell him we're working late again, winking face. I could have gone digging. Could have snapped photos, done the whole paranoid husband dance. But honestly, I didn't need to. She was sloppy, and I was patient. But the real confirmation came from someone else. Her name was Ashley, Ryan's little sister. She'd gone to school with Angie. Not close, but friendly. She came by the shop one afternoon to ask about a tune-up, and as we were chatting, she casually asked, so you and Angie doing okay? I froze. What makes you ask? Oh, she shifted. Just saw her car the other night parked outside the Circle and, you know, that motel by the 78 on-ramp? Thought maybe y'all were doing a staycation or something. She was pulling in around 7, dressed like she was headed to a date night. I didn't blink. She told me she was at yoga. Ashley's face dropped. Oh, I gave her a smile. Thanks for the tip. She looked like she wanted to crawl into a carburetor. I went back inside the shop, poured myself a cup of burnt coffee, and stared at the oil-stained floor for a good 5 minutes. That was it. The last little piece I needed. She was cheating, and not in some vague emotional way. Not in a we've grown apart way. No, this was concrete. Hotel rooms. Excuses. Wrenches gone missing. She thought I didn't know, which meant I had the upper hand. That night, I played it cool. Grilled some burgers. Played country music on the porch. Told her she looked nice. She did. Tight jeans, hair done up like she used to when we first dated. She smiled at me. You're in a good mood. Just thinking about our anniversary coming up. She lit up. Oh my God, I forgot. I faked a laugh. That's okay. I figured I'd plan something low-key. Oh yeah, she said. Like what? Cookout at the shop. Friends, good food. Thought it might be fun to do it where it all started. She bit her lip. That's actually really sweet. I nodded. You should invite Janelle. And her boyfriend, too. The way her face twitched was tiny, a flicker of worry before she could hide it behind a sip of wine. Sure, she said. I'll check with her. That's when I knew she didn't know I knew. That's the best position to be in, by the way, when your opponent still thinks you're clueless. Because then you get to control the pace, the stage, the moment of impact. The next week, I made preparations. Pete and Ryan helped set up the shop, moved some lifts around, set up picnic tables, cleaned the hell out of the floors. I hung string lights across the rafters, bought a giant cooler and filled it with every beer brand under the sun. Set up a Bluetooth speaker with a playlist Angie made back when we were still pretending to be happy. And then I got to work on the game. See, every good party needs entertainment. And every revenge needs a stage. I printed out screenshots from the motel receipts, the yoga class schedule, the Instagram DMs I quietly snapped off her phone one morning when she left it unlocked to go check the dryer. I printed out the Impact Wrench user agreement, which I made up, but looked official enough to pass as a real tool rental form. On it, I wrote, Loan to Janelle's boyfriend, signed by A. Thompson. I laminated everything. Neat. Professional. Like a school science fair project. And then I made little game cards. Each one had 2 quotes. One true, one false. Example. I was at yoga. I was at the Circle and Motel. Guess which one's the lie? Asterisk asterisk. I called it Who's the Liar? The day of the cookout, everything looked perfect. Clear skies. Music playing. Grill sizzling. The scent of smoked ribs drifting across the parking lot like bait in a trap. Friends showed up. Employees. Even a few regulars who just wanted free beer. Pete brought his wife. Ryan brought Ashley, which made me grin. Full circle. Then Angie showed, wearing a white sundress and heels, smiling like she wasn't about to eat her own foot. And beside her, a tall, tan guy in a polo and mirrored sunglasses. "Rick, this is Brian," she said, eyes wide like she was presenting a new car. "Janelle's boyfriend." He shook my hand. Firm grip. Fake smile. "Heard a lot about you, man." I smiled back. Hope it was all true. He laughed nervously. Angie didn't. We ate, drank, laughed. I kept it light. Toasted our anniversary with a plastic cup of cheap whiskey and told a few funny stories from back when the shop opened. She clung to my arm like a woman who had no idea she was in a burning building. And then I clapped my hands. "All right, y'all. Time for a little game." I led them over to a whiteboard by the garage door. "Rules are simple," I said. "I'm going to show you a couple statements. You guess which one's the lie." People were buzzed. Loose. Cheering. The first round was harmless. Pete once welded a wrench to a transmission. Ryan accidentally superglued his hand to a carburetor. Ryan groaned. "Hey." People laughed. Then I put up the next card. She was at yoga. She was at the Circle Inn motel. Dead silence. Angie froze. "Which one's the lie?" I asked, grinning. A few chuckles. Nervous ones. Then I flipped the board. Behind it, a blown-up printout of the motel receipt. Right next to a screenshot of her yoga class schedule, marked canceled. She tried to speak. I cut her off. Next board. "He's Janelle's boyfriend. He's been sleeping with my wife." Gasps. Brian turned white. I flipped the board. DM screenshots. Photos of them at a rest stop. And the kicker, a selfie she'd taken in the motel mirror. Wearing my shirt. People were dead quiet. I raised my cup. "Happy anniversary, babe." Then I looked straight at Brian and added, "You didn't tell her you were married either, huh?" The room shifted. Someone whispered, "No way." I turned to the crowd. "Yeah, that's right. Brian here is married. With a kid. And his wife." I pointed to the man stepping forward behind the crowd. A clean-cut guy in a button-down, holding a clipboard and a folder of investment paperwork. "That's Brad, my new investor. His wife is Janelle." Angie turned white. Brian looked like he'd been punched in the gut. And me? I just smiled. Because nothing fixes betrayal like a little public maintenance. There's this moment after an engine seizes, a kind of stillness. No rattling, no warning lights, just a final lurch and silence. That's what it felt like after I dropped the bomb at the anniversary cookout. No one moved. Angie's face had gone slack, like her brain had hit the wrong gear and snapped something in the process. Brian was staring at Brad, the new investor, the man whose name he hadn't bothered to ask when he slithered into Janelle's life, and apparently into my wife's too. Brad. He was calm. Cold calm. The kind that only comes from months of knowing something's wrong and just waiting to confirm it. I stepped back, took a sip of beer, and let it settle in. Silence in a garage full of people is unnatural. Usually, there's the clink of tools, an air compressor hiss, laughter, bad country music. Not today. Angie broke first. "You." Her voice cracked like cheap plastic. "You did all this? You set me up?" I looked her dead in the eye. "You gave away my tools. Figured I'd return the favor." People started shifting uncomfortably. Ryan looked like he wanted to high-five me and hide under a table at the same time. Pete just stared at his shoes, like he'd accidentally walked into a funeral wearing the wrong color. Angie tried to rally. "You embarrassed me. In front of our friends, your coworkers." "Our friends?" I raised an eyebrow. "You mean the ones who didn't know you were sleeping with a married man in motel rooms while lying about yoga?" Brian tried to step in. "All right, man, I think we should all just—" "You don't speak here." Brad cut in, calm as ice. He walked up to Brian, handed him a plain white envelope, and said, "You'll want to read this." Brian opened it, pulled out a set of printed screenshots, emails, photos, one of them time-stamped from 2 nights ago. The same day Angie claimed she was meeting her sister for dinner. His face collapsed in on itself. "You were spying on me?" "No," Brad said. "I was protecting my daughter. And my money." That got the room buzzing again. Brad turned to me, gave me a nod. "I'll be in touch next week. Paperwork looks good. Happy to move forward with the investment, assuming you're still in." I clinked my beer bottle against his. "I'm in." Angie looked between us like we were speaking a different language. "Wait, you're investing in the shop?" Brad smiled at her, but it wasn't kind. Yep, Rick has vision. Integrity. You know, qualities you used to pretend to have. She looked like she might vomit. Brian backed toward the exit, muttering something about needing air. No one stopped him. He left like a man who'd just realized he didn't actually own the car he was driving. I turned back to the guests. Sorry for the drama, folks. Drinks are still cold. Food's still hot. Stay if you want, but no pressure. Some people stayed. Out of morbid curiosity, I think. Others shuffled out, whispering. But the energy shifted. I could breathe again. The lights didn't feel so harsh. Angie stood there, stunned, arms crossed like a kid waiting to wake up from a nightmare. She tried again. You planned this. You waited. You humiliated me. I nodded. Yup. Her lip trembled. What kind of man does that? I smiled. One who owns a business, a backbone, and now, your reputation. That one hit. She grabbed her purse and stormed toward the exit. The sundress she'd picked for our big night, flapping behind her like a torn sail. I didn't watch her leave. I turned back to the grill, flipped some burgers, and let Pete tell a story about the time Ryan locked himself in the shop bathroom during a thunderstorm. Life kept moving. The party, what was left of it, turned into one of those awkwardly legendary ones. The kind people talk about for years, but can't quite admit they enjoyed. 3 hours later, when the last car pulled away and the string lights were still buzzing, I sat in my office with a fresh beer and the air conditioner humming like a prayer. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. One voicemail. I played it. Angie's voice. Shaky. I don't even know what to say. You blindsided me. You made me look like trash. I didn't think you'd go that far. We were supposed to be celebrating. You made a joke out of everything. I don't even know who you are anymore. I deleted it. She knew exactly who I was. She just thought I'd never act on it. That night, I went home alone. No yelling. No crying. No rage. Just silence. And silence, I've learned, is the loudest kind of revenge. The next morning, I came into the shop like normal. Pete was already there, brewing his chemical-tasting coffee. Ryan had a hangover the size of Missouri, but was grinning. You good? Pete asked. I nodded. Real good. Gotta say, Ryan chimed in. That was the coldest thing I've ever seen in my life. I shrugged. Sometimes you gotta bleed the brake line before the whole system crashes. They laughed. I checked the appointment book. 3 oil changes, 1 full diagnostic, and a meeting with Brad at noon to finalize his investment. Business was moving. That afternoon, I got an email from Angie's lawyer. Subject, initial divorce discussion. No surprise there. She wanted to discuss amicable division of property. Claimed she was willing to be fair. Generous, even. Said she hoped we could keep things civil. I forwarded it to my guy. Told him to draft a response. No alimony. No assets. Just her out of my life. I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted peace. A few days later, Brad and I signed papers. He was now a 30% partner in the shop, and we had the capital to expand. New lifts, a front-end scanner, even a waiting area that didn't smell like rubber and stale donuts. Angie texted me once more. Just one line. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I didn't respond. She meant for the motel to happen. The lies. The gaslighting. The vanish tool. She just didn't mean to get caught by someone who could turn betrayal into a 5-course event. A week later, Ashley, Ryan's sister, dropped by again. I still can't believe you actually pulled that off, she said. I grinned. She started it. Ashley tilted her head. You ever gonna date again? After all that? I looked at the grease under my nails. The shop buzzing behind me. The smell of gasoline and second chances. Not in a rush. She smiled. Well, if you ever want someone to grab a beer with who doesn't cheat, lie, or borrow your tools without asking, I'm around. That caught me off guard. I laughed. You asking me out, Ashley? She winked. I'm saying I know a damn good mechanic when I see one. She left me her number on a business card for her detailing gig. Maybe nothing would come of it. Maybe it would. But one thing was for sure. I had my wrench back. And nobody was ever borrowing it again. Divorcing Angie wasn't the hard part. Getting used to the quiet, that was. Not the absence of her voice, exactly. Lord knows she didn't talk all that much unless it was about someone else's business or what new diet trend she and Janelle were pretending to follow that week. No, it was the absence of the second guessing. The little internal arguments I used to have while brushing my teeth or putting on my boots. Was she really at yoga? Why is her phone suddenly face down all the time? Should I ask her about the charge on the visa or let it go? All gone. Quiet as a cold engine. The Monday after the barbecue was the first time I walked into my house and felt like I owned it again. Her stuff was gone. Most of it, anyway. She'd sent a moving crew while I was at the shop. Didn't even bother to show up herself. Took the bed from the guest room, her desk, a few framed photos from the hallway, and the coffee machine. Left behind 2 suitcases of clothes she didn't want and a box labeled miscellaneous. Inside the box, a single broken necklace, 3 expired spa gift cards, and, I kid you not, the instruction manual for the impact wrench. I taped it back up and tossed it in the garage. Figured it could rot out there with the rest of the trash. At the shop, things were changing fast. Brad didn't waste time. He was calm, methodical, the kind of guy who takes betrayal and turns it into action. I respected that. In the span of a week, we drafted blueprints for an expanded floor plan, ordered new lifts, and started interviewing for a 4th mechanic. Thinking of calling it Thompson and Rayner, he said one afternoon, sketching a rough logo on a napkin. You sure? I asked. It's your capital. He shrugged. You built the name. I'm just here to make it bigger. I nodded. Fair enough. Pete and Ryan were cautiously optimistic. Ryan, especially, couldn't stop grinning. Never thought I'd live to see you in a partnership with a guy who used to be married to your wife's side piece's mistress, he said one morning over bacon and biscuits. I laughed. Life's funny like that. What wasn't funny was what came next. Thursday night, around 8:30, just as I was closing the shop and wiping down the counters, I heard a knock on the front glass. There she was, Angie, wearing that same damn white sundress from the barbecue. The one she wore when she brought Brian into my shop, like she was proud of him. I let the door stay shut for a few seconds, long enough to see her shift her weight and lose that forced confidence she always led with. Then I opened it. Forgot something? I asked. She blinked. Can we talk? I looked around. Empty parking lot. Pete and Ryan were long gone. Streetlights buzzing overhead like angry flies. I held the door open but didn't invite her in. She stepped inside anyway. Won't be long, she said. She trailed off. Looked around the shop like she hadn't stood here 100 times before, sipping coffee while pretending to understand torque specs. You rearranged, she muttered. New lift comes next week. She nodded. I saw the papers. You and Brad. I waited. That's what this was really about, wasn't it? Getting me out so you could cash in. I blinked. You think I planned the entire cookout to land an investor? She crossed her arms. I think you embarrassed me, humiliated me, and then got everything you wanted. I took a slow step toward her. Angie, you gave away my tools. Slept with a man you called your friend's boyfriend. Lied to my face. And now you want to make me the villain because I didn't crawl into a bottle afterward. Her lip trembled. She tried to summon that righteous anger she used to throw like a punch, but it didn't land the same now. It was like watching someone try to use a broken jack. It lifts a little, then gives out under weight. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said finally. You just meant to get away with it. She didn't respond. I walked back behind the counter, grabbed my keys from the hook, and pointed to the door. Whatever you came here for, you're not going to find it. She hesitated. He left me, you know. I didn't ask who. She told me anyway. Brian. Said he needed to work on himself. Whatever the hell that means. I nodded. Probably means his wife canceled the lease on his balls. She flinched. I'm not looking for pity, she added. Good. Because I'm out of stock. She looked at me like she was hoping for something. Anger, tears, maybe even a tiny thread of sympathy. I gave her nothing. I messed up, she whispered. Yup. I thought you'd always be there. You were steady. Safe. Turns out I'm also petty and great with printers. A long pause. Then she finally said it. Can we start over? I stared at her for a moment. I thought about the years. The lies. The way she walked into my shop with him like I was a damn welcome mat. I thought about the motel receipts. The wrench. The games. And then I said, you gave away something that didn't belong to you, Angie. More than once. Some things don't come back. She nodded. Tears now. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't answer. I opened the door. She walked out. I locked it behind her and turned off the lights. The next morning, I found a voicemail from her. Same script. Different words. Apology, regret, memory lane. Deleted. By the end of the week, I was back to full throttle. The new signage was up, Thompson and Rayner Automotive. Brad stood beside me, holding a beer, staring at it like it was a tombstone and a birth announcement at the same time. "We did it," he said. "Not yet," I replied. "But we're close." That night, I sat on the porch with the dog and watched the sunset burn out over the edge of the lot. The quiet felt earned now, like it belonged to me. But even peace has its limits. And there was still one loose bolt that hadn't been tightened yet. There's something I've learned about betrayal. It echoes. You think you've shut the door, nailed it closed, even burned the damn house down behind you. But sometimes, the knock comes anyway. Sometimes, the past circles back wearing a fresh shirt and a guilty grin, like it never broke a thing. That knock came for me 2 Thursdays after Angie walked out of my shop. I just locked up for the day. Pete had gone home to help his kid build a lopsided birdhouse. Ryan was fiddling with some new diagnostic toy in the bay, half listening to a podcast about conspiracy theories and motor oil. I just finished balancing the deposit and was walking to my truck when I saw a figure waiting at the edge of the lot. At first I thought it was a customer, maybe someone who missed their pickup window. But then the shape sharpened under the sodium lights. It was Brian. Brian, Janelle's boyfriend, who somehow managed to sleep with both my wife and his own wife's best friend in the span of a few months, all while keeping his shirt tucked and his smirk smug. He looked different now, less tan, less sure of himself, hair unkempt, shirt untucked, like he'd been living out of his car. I wouldn't have been surprised if he had. I didn't say anything, just stared. He raised a hand, hesitant. "Rick." "Hey." I leaned against my truck, arms crossed. "You lost." "No," he said. I came to apologize." I tilted my head. "To me?" He looked down. "Yeah." I waited. "I know you probably don't want to hear it. And you have every right to tell me to screw off. But I've been doing some thinking. A lot of it. About everything." I scratched my chin. "Everything including my wife." He flinched. "Yeah, that too." I let the silence stretch. He filled it, because cowards always do. "Angie and I mean, it wasn't serious. At least, not to me. I was going through some stuff with Janelle, and Angie she was just there. You know how that kind of thing happens." "No," I said flatly. "I don't." He nodded, looking down at the asphalt. "Right. Of course. Look, I know what I did was wrong. I wasn't thinking straight. I hurt a lot of people. Janelle's gone. Took my daughter. Moved back in with her folks. Angie won't return my calls either. Tragic," I said, not blinking. He laughed, hollow and humorless. "Yeah, I guess I deserve that." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "What's that?" I asked. "Application," he said. "Heard you're hiring." I actually laughed then. Not a chuckle, not a polite laugh. A real, loud bark of a laugh that made Ryan poke his head out from the bay and raise an eyebrow. "You're kidding me." Brian looked wounded. "I've got experience. Not just body work, electrical diagnostics. You can call my old shop in Dalton, they'll vouch. I'm trying to get my life back together, man. And you think the guy whose wife you slept with, lied to, and embarrassed in front of 30 people at a barbecue should be the one to help you do that?" He didn't answer. I stepped forward. "You stood in this lot with her, Brian. You shook my hand and smiled like you weren't cheating with the woman who was supposed to be standing beside me. You walked into my shop like you belonged. I didn't know she was your wife at first," he said, weak. "Bull. You knew by the second time. But you kept coming. Because you thought I'd never find out." He nodded. "You're right." I leaned closer. "So let me make this simple. You're not welcome here. Not in my shop, not on my lot, not in my rearview mirror. You don't get to stand in the wreckage and ask for a broom." He held the paper out anyway. Desperate. "I've got nowhere else to go, man." "Try the motel," I said. "You're already a rewards member, right?" He left after that. No argument. No drama. Just turned and walked off into the night. I watched him until he disappeared down the sidewalk. Ryan joined me by the truck, arms folded. "Was that who I think it was?" "Yep." "He actually applied?" "Yep." Ryan laughed. "Man's got brass once. No brains, but brass." I shook my head. Some people confuse shame with bravery. He'll figure out the difference. The next morning, Brad stopped by to finalize the vendor contracts. He saw me standing by the new signage, sipping coffee, staring out across the lot like I was guarding a kingdom. "Long night?" he asked. "Visitor?" He raised an eyebrow. "Brian." Brad snorted. "Let me guess." "Begged, cried, offered to mow your lawn." "Worse." "Asked for a job." Brad nearly dropped his clipboard. "You're kidding." "I wish." "Did you?" I cut him off with a look. Good, he said. We don't need that kind of energy around here. We signed the contracts. By that afternoon, the new lift was installed. I went home that night feeling clean. Not happy exactly, but cleaner than I had in a long time. Angie was gone. Brian was gone. Janelle had texted me earlier in the week. Short message, polite, saying thanks for not going after her when everything blew up. Said she and her daughter were doing okay. I told her I was glad to hear it. She replied, "You're a better man than both of them. Hope the shop thrives." I sat on the porch, drinking cold beer out of an old Firebird pint glass, and watched the summer evening stretch out like an old dog on warm concrete. That's when the next message came in. From a number I didn't recognize. Just a photo. Angie, sitting across a diner booth from Brian. Half a coffee left. His hand on hers. Timestamped that morning. I stared at it for a second. Let it land. Not because I was surprised, but because I wasn't. 5 minutes later, Angie texted me. "You were right about him. He lied to me again. I shouldn't have trusted him. Call me." I locked my phone. Set it face down. Didn't reply. Instead, I walked into the garage, grabbed a rag, and wiped down the Milwaukee impact wrench that started it all. The one she gave away without asking. The one I almost lost track of. It sat in my hand heavy and real. Unlike promises. Unlike love built on lies. The garage was quiet. Smelled like rubber, oil, and clean beginnings. And I stood there, in the middle of everything I'd rebuilt. New tools, new lifts, new name, and realized the fire might have scorched me. But it didn't burn me down. Closure's a funny thing. Some people beg for it. Some think they'll find it in a long sob session or some heartfelt apology that ties up all the loose ends in a pretty little box. But me? I've come to believe closure isn't something you're given. It's something you take. Sometimes it sounds like a door slamming. Sometimes it's silence. And sometimes it's just the sound of an engine starting when you thought it never would again. It was a week after I got that last photo, the one of Angie and Brian back in a booth like nothing had happened, when I got the call. From her. She didn't start with pleasantries. Just said, "Can we meet?" I almost said no. But something in her voice, not desperation, not guilt, just this flat, drained tone, made me curious. Like she was done rehearsing the part she always played. I agreed. Said I'd meet her at Clyde's, the dive bar 2 towns over that used to serve the best fried pickles and the worst karaoke on Friday nights. She picked the place, which told me everything I needed to know. We weren't doing nostalgia. We were doing something else. She was already there when I walked in. Corner booth, glass of red wine half drunk, sunglasses pushed up into her hair even though it was dark as a cave in there. She looked tired. Not makeup tired. Life tired. I slid into the booth across from her. She gave a faint smile. "Thanks for coming." I nodded. Didn't say anything. She cut right to it. "I just wanted to say, I get it now." I raised an eyebrow. "I get why you did what you did. At the barbecue. The whole slideshow. The receipts. The who's the liar game. I get it." I waited. "You needed to win," she said. "You needed to take back something. After everything." I leaned back in the booth. "Is that what you think I was doing? Keeping score?" She looked down at her glass. "Weren't you?" I shook my head. "No. I wasn't trying to win. I was just done losing." She nodded slowly. "I didn't come here to argue." "Good. I just wanted to say that I was wrong. About a lot. About you. About us." I sipped my Coke. I'd quit drinking last month. Something about turning the page. "You were steady," she said. "You were loyal. And I got bored. That's the truth." She said it with no flair. No theatrics. Just that flat voice. Honest, maybe for the first time in years. "And Brian?" She chuckled. "He's a liar. Worse than me. I thought he'd leave Janelle. He said he would. Then when she caught on, he said he'd move in with me. But then he backed out of that too. I thought I was getting something exciting. I got a couch surfer with an ego problem." I gave a slow nod. "Karma. It's got a wrench like mine." She smiled faintly at that. "You always were good with tools." I shrugged. "Only the ones that don't break on purpose." She went quiet again. Stirred her drink with a straw she didn't sip from. "I didn't think you'd ever stop loving me," she said finally. "I didn't either," I admitted. And it was the truth. There was a time, a long one, where I thought Angie and I would go the distance. Retirement, grandkids, matching rocking chairs on a porch. But somewhere along the line, she took the screwdriver and twisted it, over and over, until the thread was stripped. And you can't re-thread that kind of damage. "I keep wondering when I lost you," she said. "You didn't lose me." I replied. You pawned me off. Gave away my time, my trust, my damn wrench. And when you tried to pick me back up, you realized I'd already been claimed. She stared at me. You know, she said, voice low. Janelle told me you two have been talking. I laughed. You jealous? She shrugged. Maybe. A little. She deserves better. You both did. She waved her hand, dismissive. Don't give me the you're a good person speech. I won't, I said. You're not. That landed like a dropped socket wrench. She stared at me, mouth open slightly, then nodded. Fair. We sat in silence for a few more minutes. I could feel her wanting to drag it out. Reach for something. A thread, a spark, a memory that could be polished into meaning. But it wasn't there anymore. She wasn't my wife. She was just a woman I used to know. And like any busted part, she needed replacing, not repairing. I finished my drink, stood up, tossed a bill on the table to cover hers too. Take care of yourself, Angie. She looked up at me. Are we done? We've been done, I said. Tonight was just me confirming the shop's clean. And then I walked out. Into the night. The air was cool, humid, smelled like ozone. Storm coming. Fitting. Back at home, the garage lights were on. I stepped in and smiled. The new lift gleamed. The counters were clean. Tools all hanging neatly, labeled, sharp, ready. The Milwaukee Impact wrench? Still there. On the bench. Right where it belonged. I picked it up, turned it in my hands. The same one that had gone missing. The same one Angie had loaned to a friend. The one that started the whole mess. People say a tool's just a tool. But to me, this one was proof that even the smallest things, when taken without care, can tell you the whole story. The next day, we opened under the new name officially. Thompson and Rayner Automotive. The line was out the door. Old customers. Curious new ones. Word had spread, not just about the business, but about the man behind it. The guy who didn't flinch when his life came apart. The guy who rebuilt, bolt by bolt. Around noon, Janelle stopped by. Brought lunch. No fanfare. Just 2 sandwiches in a brown bag and a smile that didn't ask for anything. You okay? She asked. Yeah, I said, mouth full of pastrami. I'm good. She looked around the garage. It looks like you finally got what you wanted. I thought about that. No, I said. I got what I earned. And that made all the difference. Subscribe to the channel